What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 554 here today of #AskGSM for July 10th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. What a week. What a weekend it was for WWE. A lot of stuff going on right now in AEW as well. I don't know if it was the weekend that we had and whatnot and wrestling, but we have a lot of questions here today from YouTube specifically, Twitter, Facebook. More questions than usual, like almost 4 pages worth. So you obviously know better than I do because I'm just starting to record here, but this is probably going to be a long episode. I want to go through everything that you guys sent in, and we have a lot of new names that sent in questions this week as well, which is awesome. So if you're sending in a question for the first time or sending in a question for the 100th time, 1000th time, whatever, I appreciate you. Thank you for the support of the show. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop your question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get right into it here, not to be wasting any more time. Central Man Network from YouTube, their first question was, who has been your favorite person and worst person to do an interview with? I know I've answered this before, so I'll keep it on the shorter side for those that probably remember my answers or have heard me talk about it before. The worst person is a harder question because of the many interviews I've done, there really hasn't been a lot of people that I'm thinking like, oh man, this is going to be a tough interview. You know who was kind of tough to interview? She was a good interview, but a tough interview. Asha Banks. In the 2 times I talked to her, she was in character both times. And the funny thing about her, and I obviously they don't do this now because she's in AEW, and at the 2 times that I talked to her, she was in WWE. The first time that I chatted with her, fun fact for you, the WWE PR person, typically they call me, unless it's like a Zoom call, it kind of works differently now. This was almost 4 years ago. This was going into her Survivor Series match, I think with Asuka, it wasn't for a championship, it was champion versus champion to that point. And the PR person called me beforehand, and again, like I said, typically they would call me anyway to then connect me with the talent. They called me like a couple minutes before the actual interview, and he just said, maybe it was a text, but I'm pretty sure it was like a phone call. I'm pretty sure from what I can recall. And they said, hey, essentially don't be discouraged if Sasha's like a bitch to you. Is not what he said exactly, but something along those lines because she's very much in character. And this was when she was still... Actually, no, she was a babyface at this point. I was going to say she's a heel, so she might be a bitch. No, she just turned babyface. She had just turned on Bayley and become the SmackDown Women's Champion at the time. But she's very like, oh, I only watch my own stuff, which might be true, might not be true, but she blurs the lines really well. And credit to her, I'm not the biggest Sasha Banks fan as like a person. I don't really know her as a person, but I'm saying like as a performer, she's obviously fantastic. But just like the energy she gives off is like big bitch energy, and it works really well when you're a heel. But she was a babyface at the time. But she kind of plays the same character regardless of the role that she's in. So anyway, the guy was trying to tell me like, hey, just don't be discouraged if she doesn't give you like great answers or if she's whatever. And we ended up doing well. Like she was getting, I guess, mad at interviewers. I don't know. But we had a decent interview. It was fine. Didn't get a lot of like great insightful answers because again, she's constantly in character. But she was even more in character the second time I talked to her because I made the mistake of saying that she was in the 3rd season of The Mandalorian. And I thought it had been, I didn't try to do this to get a scoop. I thought it had been officially reported that she was in the show, that she was taking time off. They reported, not even reported, but like revealed, announced that she was in the 3rd season of the show. It was not officially publicly announced. So when I said that, and I said it as a matter of fact, like, oh, how was it, filming for the 3rd season of Mandalorian? Understandably, to a certain degree, she sounded really annoyed, like, I'm actually not in that show, thank you for putting that out there, but I'm actually not in it. And like the way that she said it, I'm like, okay, like, calm down, it's not that big of a deal. And then obviously she was in the show. But I get it, it's a Disney show, they'll fucking shoot you if you reveal that you're in a show that you're not publicly announced for yet, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But it was kind of like off-putting. And again, I didn't do it to get a scoop. That's probably what she thought I was doing. I just made a genuine mistake. And I said that, but Sasha Banks, long story short, not my favorite person to interview. I haven't interviewed her since. That was like, again, the first one was late 2020. I think the second one was late 2021. So it's been a few years. Maybe she's better with that stuff now. I would assume not. She does a lot of interviews in AEW as Mercedes Moné, but I assume she's in character most of the time. So anyway, Braun Strowman, the first time I talked to him, like, his phone kept cutting out. He was driving when we were doing the interview, so he didn't give a lot of great answers. The other times I talked to him, he was fine, but like the first one wasn't my favorite interview when I first started doing them on the regular back in 2020. Matt Taven, I've told that story before. I like Matt Taven. I think he's really talented. I've been following his career almost since the beginning, back in like 2009, when he was starting out in like Northeast Wrestling and the Northeast Wrestling scene and whatever. Again, long story short here with Matt Taven, I had written, I don't know if this is the exact correlation, but just to give some context here, I did say many years ago, I didn't write an entire article about him, but I did write an article for What Culture, running down the top 10 things that Ring of Honor was doing at this time. This was like late 2019. The company was in terrible shape. I mean, this was 2 years before they went under, and they ended up improving like quality-wise during COVID, but like some of the stuff they were doing at that point, the lack of women's division, losing a lot of talent to AEW and New Japan, and just a lot of the stuff they were doing in late 2019 was just awful. And one of the things they put on there was Matt Taven becoming the Ring of Honor World Champion. I like Matt Taven a lot. I was happy for him, but I thought it was the wrong call that he was the Ring of Honor World Champion. Not that he killed the company, but the company went through one of its worst periods while he was champion. That's just a fact from a lot of different standpoints. And obviously what we know now, they made the right call, but in 2019, a lot of us, myself included, were pitching for Marty Scurll to become the champion. He was the hottest thing going. He wasn't in AEW at that point. They had Marty Scurll. He ended up re-signing, then obviously he got canceled about a year later in 2020. So again, like I said, in retrospect, they made the right call. But at the time, it seemed like a pretty questionable thing to put the belt on Taven, which went over like a fucking fart in church at MSG instead of Marty Scurll, who was what, he was the person that people wanted to see win. So, again, I don't know if that was the reason why Taven had, like, an issue with me when we talked. And we ended up having a pretty good interview. But he was giving me, like, again, maybe he was just in heel mode. I don't know. But the other times I've talked to him in person and have interviewed him, he was really cool because I've known him. He's known of me for a long time. It's not like we didn't know each other because, again, like I said, I followed his career for a long time. We're not, like, best friends by any means at all. But it was just weird. And, again, he kept calling me, like, a doubter and all this other sort of stuff. And maybe I was leaning too much into it or reading too much into it, thinking, hey, maybe he's, like, not shooting here. Maybe he's just trying to be in character, which, again, I didn't get that vibe before the interview, during the interview, after the interview. It was over Zoom, over camera, so it's not like I couldn't, like, see him face to face. Like, he knew who I was. He was very strange about the whole thing. It was just weird. It was really, really weird. So, and I bring up that article because it ended up getting taken down. You can't even find it anymore because I think it was so, not like bad, like it wasn't a bad article, but like, I don't know What Culture, like they had heard from Ring of Honor's PR team, who I've had contact with before and I never had any issues with, so I'm not really sure what the problem was. But they had me take the article down actually shortly after I wrote it. So again, I don't know if he was aware of it in the time that I wrote it and it was up, or he just saw something else I said. I don't know, because a lot of people don't give a fuck what I have to say, because I'm not like a big personality in the wrestling space. So it was very strange. That Taven interview was weird. It's up here on the channel if you want to check it out. You probably won't notice anything if you watch it, but just me personally, I got a very weird vibe from that. So I know I said I wasn't going to make this a long question, and I did. But those are like the weaker interviews I've done, I feel like, and some other ones just weren't great, or I just don't remember, but those are the ones that stand out. Favorite person, Regal was amazing. He gave me a lot of time. He's obviously my favorite wrestler of all time, so he was a lot of fun to chat with for obvious reasons. CM Punk, same thing. He was pretty fucking cool. I've always been a big Punk guy, so he was cool when I chatted with him over the phone. Really a lot of them. I mean, Kofi Kingston has always been a blast to talk to. He remembers me each time, so that obviously helps. Goldberg, shockingly, when I first interviewed him, I've shared that story before, when he fucking intimidated the fuck out of me. He called me from a blocked number. I mean, this was for the interview. He called me from a blocked number, and the first thing he says to me is like, is this, like, he sounded really bothered. And he said, "Oh, is this Graham?" And I said, "Yeah." And then before I could even hit record for the interview, he said, "No TNA questions, you hear me?" Because I guess the rumors going on at the time was that he was going to TNA. And I said, of course. And I was actually going to ask him about it. So I'm like scrapping the questions from my question list as I'm hitting the record button, which I thought was funny. But the other times I chatted with him a couple years later, he was actually great. Goldberg was a really fun person to talk to, and he was really nice and cool with his time. Taker was fucking cool to talk to. Stone Cold Steve Austin had one of my favorite interviews with him ever, about a year ago. And the first one was cool too, but specifically the second one, we chatted over Zoom last spring. He was awesome. Kurt Angle's always been cool. Edge I love chatting with. Ray's always great. There's a lot of favorite ones, and those are just some of the few. Your second question, and I promise I won't make every question 5 minutes. Your second question, do you think an MJF heel turn was the right call? I do. So here's the thing. MJF was not a babyface for that long. He just kind of turned last summer, late last year, officially, whatever. And then he came back as a babyface. He missed 6 months of his career, so it's not like he was a babyface full-on for a full-on year, you know? But here's the thing. MJF is a natural heel. He does his best work as a heel. When he came back, I'm very happy that he's back. I was stoked that he was back. I think it's a great get for AEW, obviously. I did not love the promo that he cut at Double or Nothing. I didn't love a lot of the promos he was cutting coming out of Double or Nothing. It popped the crowd and whatnot, but it just kind of felt like Attitude Era, low-hanging fruit Attitude Era type Triple H promos from like DX days and shit, which were entertaining 25 years ago. But in modern day, a lot of the material was like, okay, like that's not really that funny, or he's just trying to be funny. It felt forced. And I don't know if that was the intent or what, but I wasn't really digging a lot of the stuff he was doing when he first came back about a month and a half ago. I feel like if he went more serious, it could have worked. But they ended up turning him. That attack on Daniel Garcia was great. We'll see the fallout tonight. He actually cut his first promo as a heel on Collision. And that right there was proof he is much better as a heel than he is as a babyface. The babyface stuff that he was doing wasn't bad, but especially with like the kangaroo kick shit, that nonsense was garbage. So I'm kind of glad he's moving away from it. And it makes more sense because now you set up multiple feuds for him as a heel. I mean, he obviously could have teamed with whoever against the Elite, as he is Mr. AEW, and they never really explored that. And he's never really... I mean, he has worked with the Elite. He has worked with the Bucks, I think once or twice. Him and Jericho faced the Bucks at Revolution a number of years ago in a good match. He faced Kenny Omega, who's not around right now. He's had a match with Adam Page, like once, I think. They haven't run that back yet. So there were feuds for him as a babyface. But as a heel, I mean, Swerve is another option for down the road if he's still world champion by that point. But for now, he's got Will Ospreay and Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia, I would do it all out. I would do it all in, Will Ospreay. I mean, I guess you could do Garcia before All In on Dynamite if he's back the next... I mean, because he would have to be off TV for the next 2 months for that match to make sense at All Out. Which if they don't want to do that, I get it. But at All In, I feel like it's got to be him and Will Ospreay. It could be for the International Championship. That's a big match to do. You could have done the match anyway, but I feel like that match works a lot better, especially, not even the match itself, but really the feud leading up to it works a lot better with MJF as a heel. So I'm glad they made that call. It was a pleasant surprise last Wednesday on Dynamite. Jordan B. from YouTube, their question was, do you think WWE should bring back Cyber Sunday as a PLE or Taboo Tuesday as an NXT TV special? Taboo Tuesday, I didn't really have much of a connection with as a fan because I didn't grow up on it. When I started watching, it was Cyber Sunday. But Taboo Tuesday, my familiarity with the show, obviously knowing what it is, the most attachment that I have to Taboo Tuesday was when it was a pay-per-view that I would book in GM mode, in SVR 06, 07, 08. I think they had it in 08 as well, even though it would have been long gone at that point. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Cyber Sunday at that point. I don't remember. But Taboo Tuesday was in the GM mode in the games, though. Cyber Sunday is what I kind of came into as a fan. It was only around for 1 year when I was a wrestling fan in 08, and then they got rid of it by 09. That was when they started doing bragging rights and fucking Hell in the Cell and all that other nonsense. So I always thought they should bring it back. And then it kind of became pointless because I was kind of shocked they never really did it in the early 2010s when social media was on the rise and they were really relying on Twitter a lot. But then they were doing it like every fucking week. Like they were having people tweet and text in and whatever for match stipulations and opponents and stuff like that on Raw. So it's like if you're doing it every week on Raw, then what's the point of doing it as its own pay-per-view? They haven't done that in a long time. I know some of the talent, I know Jericho's talked about this. They did not like the concept because they didn't really know what to plan for. And then from a fan standpoint, if they know what to plan for because all the matches are the same, do you want a no DQ match, a no holds barred match, a falls count anywhere match? They can work the same match fucking regardless. So it's kind of lame from a fan standpoint, but if you really want to shake it up, the talent don't like it because it's 3 drastically different options and you don't know which one's going to win. Or for an opponent, you got to plan out the match. So it is difficult. I understand why they probably moved away from it. And they also moved away from it, I would imagine, because it wasn't selling. That's really why they've done anything, actually. If it's not working as a pay-per-view concept, they'll move away from it. Now, that really hasn't been the case in recent years because they're not on pay-per-view anymore. They're on Peacock, and they're not really worried about, viewership, although they tout high viewership when it's convenient for them or it is high or whatever. We don't know the numbers because they don't report the numbers, but that's what it is. But back to your original question, as a pay-per-view, probably not. I don't think they need it back as a pay-per-view. They're already bringing back Bad Blood in October, and I guess they could do another they're doing Crown Jewel in early November, so I think we know the slate for the rest of the year. From here on out, it's SummerSlam in early August, Bash in Berlin in late August, August 31st if I'm not mistaken, Bad Blood about 5 weeks later in early October. Then you have the Crown Jewel show in Saudi Arabia in early November, like 3rd or 2nd or whatever it is. And I think it's 2nd. If it's a Saturday, it's November 2nd because I think Halloween this year is on a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have War Games, Survivor Series in late November. Now, they could do a December show. They haven't since 2020, so I don't think they will. I don't think they need to. I don't think they should. But anyway, they don't need to bring it back on the main roster. I would love if they brought it back on NXT. Now, again, what form that would take with what people are choosing and whatever, I don't know. But NXT falls on a Tuesday anyway, so doing it as a Taboo Tuesday stipulation, and the NXT PLEs also fall on Sundays most of the time. Battleground was on a Sunday. This most recent show was on a Sunday from this past weekend, Heatwave. You could totally do Cyber Sunday or Taboo Tuesday as an NXT TV special. Probably an NXT TV special. So they could vote people, they could show the results during the show. I feel like that'd be cool. They don't need to do it. I wouldn't be bummed if they never brought it back. But for nostalgia reasons, I think it'd be cool as a one-off special. Specifically in NXT where they do that sort of thing anyway. Micah's first question here from YouTube. Micah does it. If you had the Money in the Bank contract to cash in on anything in life, what would it be? I see we're stealing questions from WWE here. I had seen that it was probably on TikTok originally. I saw it on YouTube Shorts, but they posed this question to the talent. And it was like a minute-long video because, like I said, it was on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, whatever. And there were some interesting answers, like Chelsea Green and Tiffany Stratton said, like, this new Chanel bag or this new line of Louis Vuitton boots or shoes. I don't know. And then they got to Kofi Kingston, and he said, I would just cash in on the lottery. I mean, then you can have all the money that you want. And honestly, that might sound like a cop-out answer, but I don't really know what the rules are of this question. So I'm going to say the lottery as well. Why wouldn't you just want to have maybe an unlimited supply of money, but at least like an obscene amount of money that you could do anything you want with, you know? So probably that. If we're talking like something physical, if that's too silly of an answer for you, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I don't know what you could really cash in on. I don't know, lifetime passes to Disney World. I mean, I feel like that'd be nice. I love going to Disney. In the last couple of years, I've gone a few times after not going for like a long time, and I had a blast every time. And that includes Disneyland, by the way, not just Disney World. That sounds dumb, but like either that or if it was something on the smaller side, which I've always wanted, and I don't think anyone's been able to find. It's been 13 years at this point. And someone could find the original Money in the Bank shirt that CM Punk wore, not the shirt that he wore, but a shirt from Money in the Bank 2011. All right. Money in the Bank 2011, when he came out for his match with John Cena. They sold those shirts in the arena. I have like a CM Punk ringer shirt from 2011. I bought it years later, but I have one of those shirts. Or I didn't buy it, actually. Alexis got it for me as a gift. But I always wanted the shirt that had the date on the back. It said, I don't know if it said I was here, but it said 7/17/2011 on the back of it. And I just could never find them online. I wasn't looking for them in the immediate aftermath of that show, because I wasn't buying shit at that point. I was in high school. But I looked for it years later, could never find it. I've looked once every couple years, and no one has it. I mean, it's been so long that no one's going to have it at this point. But I know people definitely bought it in the arena that night, and they probably still have it, and maybe they will come up at some point because people want to get rid of their wrestling shit. I don't want to wear it necessarily. I don't really want a worn t-shirt, but that specific shirt from that specific show, because it is my favorite pay-per-view of all time, I would say, main roster-wise, I would love that shirt. So if I could cash in on that shirt, if I could find it, it would probably be that. His second question, they announced John Cena's retirement will not end at Mania, but will end in December 2025. WWE doesn't do a pay-per-view in December 2025, or just December in general at this point. Do you think they should book it similar to Sting, where they do an entire pay-per-view dedicated to Cena in December, where the main event is his last match? Is this a good idea? Why or why not? No, I was thinking that. I feel like they absolutely should. Call it Cena's last time, Cena's last match, the last time is now, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Definitely. I feel like they should absolutely have an entire show dedicated to Cena's last match. Or, as I've seen others suggest, you just televise and make it a similar thing, which they also did with The Shield. You televise one of the house shows where he has his final match. Because if we're talking December, if that's really where he's retiring and not at Survivor Series or something, then you televise the MSG house show the day after Christmas. I know they were in Boston after Christmas last year. They could do a house show in Boston. But like I said, they did the same thing with The Shield 5 years ago. The show itself was whatever, but they televised the last couple of matches, and they televised The Shield's final match. It was them against, the same opponents they had been facing for months at that point. I think it was Baron Corbin, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley. And they beat him with ease, obviously. And it was a cool little thing. And it indeed was The Shield's final match, because Ambrose was gone from the company right after that. And he debuted in AEW a month later. So he had a pretty cool treatment on the way out, which a lot of people don't get. They could do something much bigger with Cena, where they televise that house show with Cena at MSG. And he has his last match there, if not in Boston at a house show, or just an entire pay-per-view, which would be fine too. I kind of lean more towards the house show thing, where it could be a smaller show, and not like a 3-hour pay-per-view in December. But I'd be fine with that too, because John Cena is obviously one of the GOATs. So if they really want to give him the all-out treatment, that would be fine. So I'd totally be on board with that. AJW, sounds like a wrestling promotion. W's their last initial. I just cut the last name out because I usually do. But AJ, their first question, now that John Cena is having his retirement tour next year, do you think he will be inducted into next year's Hall of Fame 2025? I would have him going by himself for being one of the GOATs. No, I don't think he will. I mean, I guess he could. He definitely could. They're in Vegas next year. Listen, if they're looking for a big name to induct, then yes. If they're missing out on a big name and Batista still can't fucking do it, I don't know what's going on with Batista. Well, I do know what's going on in that he's busy. But, he's still owed an induction from, 4 or 5 years ago. So I would have Batista go in before anyone. They just keep inducting these other people first, and that's fine. They inducted Heyman this year, and they had Ray last year, Taker the year before that. And these people are all worthy. The funny thing with Ray and Heyman is that they're both still active. Heyman's still active. I thought they would wait until after he was done. Rey Mysterio really shocked me because he's still going strong. The guy's in there every fucking week on television wrestling. So most people get inducted after they're retired or have a career-threatening injury or whatever. Not them, or not Ray. Ray's still in there every single week, and they inducted him probably because they were in California, and that's where he has ties to, blah, blah, blah. That would make sense. Cena would be fine because we know he's retiring, and even if he wasn't, just to put him in, because he's obviously Hall of Fame worthy, that's totally fine. But here's the issue, though. People have said that before about people like The Undertaker. Even talent said that Undertaker should go in on his own, have his own class all to himself. And then they didn't do that. Taker went in, and he had an entire hour for his induction, a lot like Paul Heyman. His induction was also really, really long. I don't really think they should do the Hall of Fame on Friday nights after SmackDown anymore. I said that this past year when I was there, and I was like, man, this is a long fucking night. It was fine when I was there on the West Coast in California. They did it. I was like, okay. But on the East Coast, it's just dreadful. You're leaving there at fucking 12:30, 1. It's just awful, especially when they have other stuff going on, and then in the following days, and it's just too much. But yeah, you can do an hour-long Cena induction and then induct a couple other people in addition to him. I don't think they need 7-person classes. That was the big Vince thing. They did that this year too, I think, with long speeches. Just cut down on the classes or just do it another time. That's what I would say. With Cena, I don't think he needs his own class. If Taker didn't get his own class, I don't think Cena needs his own class. I said Tina because I combined Taker and Cena. Stone Cold didn't get his own class either. He also went in last, but he wasn't in his own class. And you can make the argument that he should have been, but there's so many greatest of all time. If you do that for Cena, why wouldn't you do that for Rock? You know what I mean? So no, I don't think they should induct him on his own. I know Andre got his own induction, but that was 30 years ago, and it wasn't really much of a Hall of Fame, and they just announced him, and that was it. So, no, I don't think he should go on by himself at this point. But they just, when you induct him that year, just don't also induct another 5 or 6 people. Give Cena an hour. I'm not even really sure he would want to talk for that long anyway. But just induct a few other people and make it a small class, like maybe 4 people total, including John Cena. AJ's second question, will the Judgment Day be a Hall of Fame faction? They have many major championships to back up their resume, weekly and compelling storylines, and Triple H changed them from being a supernatural Wyatt-style group to an Evolution Bloodline-style stable where championships and long-term great storytelling matter. Yeah, I mean, listen, almost everyone in the active roster, I don't want to say almost everyone, but like not even in my opinion, but in WWE's eyes, everyone's a Hall of Famer. Kofi Kingston's a Hall of Famer, which he is. But like you can make the argument for a lot of people, like even the lowest of mid-carders being fucking Hall of Famers because everyone has all these championships and were around for a long time and stuff like that. We haven't gotten around to inducting these people into the Hall of Fame, but come 5-10 years from now, they're going to be inducting people like, I mean, not Dolph is Hall of Fame worthy, but I don't know what a good example would be, but like fucking Santino Marella. Does he belong in the Hall of Fame? No, not really in my opinion, because he had the honkometer and a couple other entertaining storylines, I guess, but like, then again, you there is no real criteria. But like if you induct Coco Beware, then why wouldn't Santino be in there? That's kind of the issue that you fall into there. I'm not saying the Judgment Day is Santino, but like there's so many great stables they haven't inducted yet. Would they induct Judgment Day before they induct Rhea on her own or Finn on his own? Like we're looking 20-25 years down the road. Will Judgment Day even be remembered as fondly 20-25 years from now? I don't know. You can make the argument that they're Hall of Fame worthy, yes. But there's a lot of groups in the last decade plus. I mean, the Shield should go in before anyone of the modern era, but you can make the argument this group should be in the Hall of Fame. Evolution should be in the Hall of Fame. They're not in the Hall of Fame as a group yet. Batista's not even in on his own yet. And that would also make Randy Orton a Hall of Famer, which he is, but like doesn't he deserve his own induction first on his own? The whole faction thing is difficult. Yeah, they are Hall of Fame faction, but we are so far removed from them ever going in that it's not even really, not that it's worth discussing. It's a good question, but I don't even want to think about that because there's so many factions even by that point that you're going to have to induct that aren't already in. Like Nation of Domination, Judgment Day is probably a better faction than they were, right? I mean, they produced a lot of Hall of Famers, but the group itself, Judgment Day is probably better. I don't know. It is difficult to say. The Bloodline, who would you even induct? Just every active member, past and present member of the Bloodline, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, Jacob Fatu, Solo, Roman. Like, how many people are we talking here from the Bloodline are going in at some point? It's so tough to say. I'm not a big faction fan in the Hall of Fame, but for them, I guess it would make sense. They probably wouldn't go in because they're going to induct each individual member in separately, but much later down the road, if they have no other options, then maybe. Your third question, after watching the Mania documentary, I thought it under-delivered. Having many hours producers to cut it into a 1-hour video felt rushed. Everything was played too safe. I understand the Bloodline is the main story of Mania, but I wish we got to see others like Drew, Punk, Sammy, Rhea, Becky, and their experience. Or just rename it Bloodline WrestleMania or WrestleMania Bloodline Edition. What are your thoughts on the doc and how would you have changed things? I love the doc. I did a full 36-minute review, or a roughly 36-minute review here on the channel a couple days ago, so check that out if you haven't already had the chance. I thought the documentary was great. Now, you're saying that you wanted to see more stuff from it. Now, I would understand if you had said, I want to see more behind the scenes on like what Cody was going to do at Mania if Rock had come back and they did Rock and Roman. What would Cody have done? And some other answers or some other questions rather, that went unanswered. I would love to know kind of the behind the scenes of that sort of stuff. In addition to what we got. What we got was great. It was really a Rock documentary with other characters sprinkled in. Or I would have understood if you said, I want to hear more from... Punk was kind of involved with it. Seth and Roman, we heard from them, but not a lot. But you're saying you want to hear from Drew and Sammy, Rhea, Becky. Here's the thing, though. The documentary is about the pivot for the main event storyline of that year's WrestleMania, this year's WrestleMania. It's not about the Women's World Championship match. It's not about Drew McIntyre. I mean, it is. I mean, Drew was affected by it, but it wasn't about him really at all. I mean, Sami Zayn also was affected by Brock getting, that whole Vince thing, but that had nothing to do with the pivot. Like, they pivoted with a lot of stuff, but specifically the main event. So it's not about any of those people. What you're thinking of is like the WWE 24s that they do on WrestleMania. If you want that, they'll probably put that up on Peacock in the next 6 months to 9 months. Most likely. They typically do. Did they do one for WrestleMania 39? I'm pretty sure they did. I don't remember, but if they did, I would have watched it. I'm pretty sure they did, because I probably broke it down here on the channel. But yeah, no, I mean, that's what you're looking for, talking about WrestleMania on the whole. Then they do a whole other separate documentary for that. I'm not even sure if they're going to do a 24 at this point on WrestleMania 40, considering we got a lot of the talk about WrestleMania 40 in that Pivot documentary that they put out last week. So I really like the documentary. I don't really have a lot of things to say about it other than what I already said in the review. Just that it was great. I really enjoyed it. I wish they had done more with it. Some of the stuff I don't believe, like Rock taking credit for stuff, which is true, I imagine. But like, there's probably more that went into it than what they discussed or could discuss. But as far as like this other stuff they could have covered, that didn't really bother me. And honestly, it was only supposed to be, apparently, I think Brian Gewirtz said this. You mentioned, it felt rushed. Apparently, it was only supposed to be 11 minutes. What they were going to put out on the Mania or the Wednesday after Mania was going to be 11 fucking minutes long. That's ridiculous. 11 minutes? That's ridiculous. So, an hour makes way more sense, and I'm glad they stretched it out that far as opposed to making it like this short little cute thing to put up on YouTube. They still put it up on YouTube, but making an hour made it feel more like a documentary as opposed to like a quick video on their YouTube channel, which I appreciated. Marl W. from YouTube, their first question was, why are certain fans turning on Sami Zayn now on social media? Is it because they are still unhappy that Chad Gable didn't face and beat Gunther at WrestleMania, which I completely understand, or is it his character being a strong champion and what they're now calling him the new Hulk Hogan? If that's true, I have not seen that myself, but that is completely fucking ridiculous. Calling Sami Zayn the new Hulk Hogan is one of the more ridiculous things I've heard in some time. If that is indeed true, I have not seen that myself. You should probably get out of that side of the internet because those fans are not worth talking to, following, associating with, blah, blah, blah. I think people have an issue with Sami's run. Anyone that has an issue with Sami's run, I don't think it's the Gable thing because people aren't talking about that anymore. I really wanted Gable too, but I think Sami's run's been great. I mean, Sami is a great performer. It's the best Intercontinental title run he's had. I mean, his first few were fine. A few of them were pretty short and forgettable. This was way better. I think the first one was like a month or two because he had to vacate it. And then he got the belt back, I think a couple months later at like Night of Champions, and he only held it for maybe a month. He wasn't champion for very long, I don't think. I think he won it back in September from Jeff Hardy, I want to say. And then he lost it. Who did he lose it to? Oh, no, he lost it to Big E. So he was champion for like 3 months. I don't really remember much. That just goes to show you right there. I don't really remember much about the run. It was fine, but it wasn't like this great run. And then he regained the belt for like 2 weeks before losing it to Ricochet in early 2022. So this is easily his best run. He's a babyface now. The promos have been good. The matches have been great with Gable and the triple threat at King and Queen of the Ring. The Breaker match was really good. People may have an issue with him beating Braun Breaker, but guess what? Braun Breaker will be fine. We saw that on Monday's Raw. Breaker will be champion. They're just extending the feud by having Breaker stay in chase mode for a little bit longer. It's not that big of a deal. So, honestly, I don't really think there's much of a valid reason. If you don't care about Sami Zayn, you don't care about Sami Zayn. But if you're shitting on his run as champion because, I wanted Breaker to win, get the fuck over it. It's called be patient. Watch him win the belt. Watch Breaker win the belt at SummerSlam. It really isn't. He's not buried. He's not ruined. He's not damaged. Breaker will be just fine. Sami's been doing a great job. I've enjoyed his run so far. He might not be the underdog they claim him to be anymore. He's not really much of an underdog at this point. But beyond that, he's had a great run. Marl's second question, where do you rank Randy Orton all time? The fact that he chose to continue to be a full-time wrestler at his age after his massive injury, saying that he has a lot more years to give to the business, one of the top 5 heels ever, and that he chose not to leave for Hollywood is GOAT, is what Marl says. Where do I rank him all time? I don't know. That's so difficult. It's easy to say top 10, but then you got to consider, like, are we talking like all time in wrestling, all time in WWE? Because you have to include, there's so many people to include there. But you're right, though. I mean, Randy Orton is among the greatest of all time. He's had a lot of longevity, a lot of injuries, but a lot of championships, much better heel than a babyface, but he's been great since he came back because he's so fucking over and people just like Randy Orton. A lot of great matches. He is almost underrated in a way for how good he is, and he probably could have had even more success as one of the faces of the company had he not, one, gotten injured so often, and two, not been his own worst enemy early on in his career. But yeah, Orton's up there. I mean, as far as where he ranks specifically, I'm reluctant to say top 10, probably top 10 if we're talking wrestling of all time. Definitely top 15. No question top 20. I'm not going to go any lower than that. But, like, I don't know who else we're including here, and there's so many people to include. I mean, Hogan, say what you will about his matches, but he is among the greatest of all time for what he brought to the business. Him, Savage, Warrior probably wouldn't be too high up there to me. I like Warrior, but I'm a Warrior fan. But, I think I put him lower down on my list for WWE because he wasn't there for all that long. But, like, even in the last number of years, where does AJ Styles rank? Where does, I don't know, are we including women as well? Like, it's tough. So I'd probably say top 10, if not top 15. Top 15, if not top 10. We'll go with that. It wouldn't be like top 5, but it would be like lower 10, if not high 15s. Chris W., their first question was from YouTube. He says, "Hey Graham, hope you're doing well. Had a great 4th of July and are having an awesome week so far. Congratulations on your 6th anniversary with Alexa. She's super cool. Appreciate that, my dude. Thank you for saying that." He says, "It's amazing how much quality wrestling we've been getting this last week. Forbidden Door was a great show last Sunday. Money in the Bank wasn't perfect, but pretty good, and I surprisingly quite enjoyed Heatwave. How would you rank the shows from best to worst? And how great is it to be a pro wrestling fan again?" I hate ranking the shows because I don't want people to think, oh, this company sucks, all this other sort of stuff. But yeah, it is, first of all, great to be a fan right now. I said that in a tweet the other day, NXT's doing better right now, which is nice. NXT, as we know, Chris specifically, we talk about NXT a lot here on the show. You ask about it, I talk about it. It has its ups and downs. It'll be fucking dull as dishwater some weeks. And then you have a show like Heatwave that completely exceeded my expectations. That ended up being a pretty fun show. WWE's been consistently entertaining for a while now, and AEW also has its peaks and valleys. Honestly, of the three, I would say Forbidden Door was the weakest, and I think Forbidden Door had better wrestling overall, but I'm just not a fan of the fucking 5-6 hour shows with 15 matches. I'm just not. But I think overall it was maybe the weakest Forbidden Door show of the three we've done so far, because I just don't really care about CMLL and Stardom and even New Japan at this point. So I'm honestly, and people said Heatwave was better than Money in the Bank. I'm going to say Money in the Bank was the best one. You're probably going to say Forbidden Door was number one. I think I enjoyed Money in the Bank the most, and it had some questionable decisions. Heatwave was a close number two. Heatwave was a pretty good show. It had some great matches. That 4-way was great, and the opener was pretty good. So I'm going to say Money in the Bank, and then Heatwave, and then Forbidden Door. But if you want to switch, and honestly, there really is no right or wrong answer. You're just asking me how I would rank them. Forbidden Door was great, but the problem with AEW shows is that they have so many great this is a good problem to have, I guess, but they have so many good shows / good matches. A lot of them just blend together, and I can't remember what else was on the card even a week later. And again, I just don't really care about the Forbidden Door stuff at this point, so I'm going to put that at number 3, but it was a great show, like you said. Next question, also from Chris. "Though many people did not know who Stephanie Valkyrie is, she shut a lot of people up by having a quality match and really standing out against Mercedes Moné at Forbidden Door, though she lost her title. There was a report the other day that both AEW and WWE are interested in her as soon as her contract expires. Who do you think will pick her up, and who do you think personally she should sign with?" I think AEW would make more sense just because she has more exposure there from the past month. She wasn't there for very long, but she was there for a month and did the Mercedes Moné thing. WWE, it's not like black and white where AEW definitely. Dragon Lee isn't on fire right now, but he had more exposure in AEW as part of, doing the thing with his brother, and I would have said, him go to AEW, that makes the most sense. But he ended up shockingly signing with WWE. And he's had, he was the NXT North American champion. They joined the LWO. He's on the main roster pretty quickly. He's had a pretty good run overall so far. Again, he's not on the show as much as he should be. But I think Dragon Lee's great. And I'm glad he's doing well. And my point is that it's not like extremely obvious that she should go to AEW. If she showed up in WWE, I'm sure she would do well. They were to put her in NXT first, I'm sure she would have a good run. And it's not even like she should definitely go to WWE because AEW's women's division is like non-existent. AEW has a lot of great women, and they're doing some good stuff right now with their women's division. And all the divisions, Toni Storm and Mariah May is simmering, about to cook. I really like the Willow Chris Statlander stuff. I really like, Mercedes Moné and Britt Baker having a feud. I love that idea. And they have a lot of other great women in addition to those women. Thunder Rosa, Deonna Purrazzo, a lot of women we do not see in the regular. The issue with AEW is that they don't have a brand split. So some of these women get stuck in like the Rampage, Collision, Purgatory stuff. But WWE, you would actually be able to see her, I would assume, more consistently on one show, whether it be NXT or Raw or SmackDown. So I'm going to say AEW probably makes more sense for her to go there just for the exposure alone. But I think she could do well in WWE. I was also very impressed by what she could do based on what I saw from her in AEW in the short time that she was there. Your next question. After watching both the ladder matches at Forbidden Door and Money in the Bank, I'm starting to believe that professional wrestlers just want to do stupid stuff for the sake of doing stupid stuff. What I mean is that the recklessness in some of these spots is very much jarring, especially with some of the spots on Saturday, like Drew tossing a ladder headfirst into Jey Uso's face at full force, Chelsea Green just being tossed off the ladder onto tables, and especially that cool-looking but completely pointless and stupid pile driver onto the ladder from Io on Zoe. I don't know, maybe I'm just being negative, but I just feel like some of these spots in these ladder matches should just be prevented as there's no guarantee of it being safe or them not getting hurt long-term in the process. Do you agree that wrestlers are starting to be too reckless, especially in these ladder matches? They've been reckless for a while, my guy. The problem is that they constantly want to one-up each other. And WWE and AEW specifically are guilty more than any other promotion of doing ladder matches. They just do way too fucking many of them. Both companies, NXT too. And it gets to the point where you do so many that you're just trying to one-up yourself from the year before or this other match from last week. Like, we have literally gotten 4 ladder matches, if not more than that, but at least 4. On Raw or on WWE, we had 2 at Money in the Bank. We had one at Battleground a month ago with the women. And then we just had one at Forbidden Door last week. That's 4 in a month. That is complete fucking overkill. Complete overkill. And they're all great matches for the most part. But again, same thing like I said earlier. Like, a lot of these matches just blend together. So they do stupid shit to stand out. And they sometimes make for cool spots, yeah. But at other times, they just do dumb shit for the sake of doing dumb shit. And then what if they get fucking hurt? So they're really just spot fests. Like, there's no psychology in a lot of these matches. And that's fine if you do them once in a while. But they do them all the time. So it's constantly like car crash type shit to the point where it's hard to care because they do them so often. So, yeah, it's not starting to be that way. It has been that way for a long time. And it is definitely a problem. I enjoy these matches, and that Io on Zoe spot was fucking insane, but it's like, what if she got seriously hurt? I'm sure she did it safe enough, but they were also botching earlier on in the match, so who the fuck knows, So all it takes is one bad spot, like the Adam Copeland thing. It looked cool for the most part. He came crashing down. It didn't even look like he hit Malachi at all. But, we did that spot, and it cost him 6 months. Because he landed on his leg and broke his leg. Like, what an idiot. So that's all it really takes. I wish they would do less of that shit and save it for when it actually matters. As opposed to doing it, then people forgetting about it like a couple days later. Your next question, thoughts on Damon Kemp being released. As I've said before, I felt he had the potential to be a good hand in the ring and did think he was a solid in-ring worker. And yes, he was better than his flash-in-the-pan brother, but I felt he lacked the personality/cadence to be anything other than a mid-card act. How about you? Where do you see him going after WWE? And can you believe both Stevenson brothers, college standouts in wrestling, could not make it in the WWE? That is a little surprising that neither of them made it, because they were all in on Gable Steveson for a while. Now, Damon Kemp has not been there as long. I mean, actually, they were around there around the same time. I think they signed him shortly after they signed Gable Steveson in 2021. Damon Kemp was there for a while. My thing with Damon Kemp, and I was going back and forth with someone last night about this on Twitter, I just don't think, in my opinion, and people get this weird fucking mentality that just because they said that someone was underutilized or wasted, that they think, oh man, what I mean, this person, you thought they were going to be world champion, they had no charisma. I mean, you said it yourself, Chris, that, I mean, I feel like your assessment of it makes more sense. I feel like he had more, I mean, you're not saying he had potential, you're just saying that he didn't really, couldn't be anything other than a mid-card guy. You're right. I'm not saying Damon Kemp was going to be NXT champion. I just feel like people have this weird fucking mentality that when I say that someone was wasted, that they think, oh, what, you think they were going to be world champion? Not everyone can be a world champion. No shit, I say that all the time. But it is a fact, or at least not really a fact, but more so in my opinion, that they could have done more with him. And putting him in two different groups isn't really trying, though. They tried with him on his own for a little bit. Coming out of that Creed's brother feud, I thought he really did have potential. Again, not to be NXT champion, but they didn't really follow up on that at all. And he did like the NXT Underground match with Eddie Thorpe, and I thought that was entertaining. He had good matches there. I thought he was actually a lot better than his brother, like a lot better. I didn't see a lot of Gable Steveson, but what we did see of him, Damon Kemp was a lot better. He could talk more. He had more of a personality. You said he had lacked personality to be anything other than a mid-card act. That's fine. Not everyone's going to be a main event act, but they need more mid-carders. And they didn't even really try to push him as a mid-carder. They put him in two fucking groups just to fill out the groups in Diamond Mine and then later on with No Quarter Catch Crew. And that was it. Like Charlotte Dempsey now leads No Quarter Catch Crew. Damon Kemp was just another guy. They just replaced him with Tavion Heights. And I think Tavion Heights is great. I've interviewed him before. I think he's very, very good, actually. But I guess they felt, oh, we have too many collegiate wrestlers. We got to cut down a little bit. Then why sign them both at the same time? Like, they signed Damon Kemp and Tavion Heights around the same period. So why not? I don't know. I just don't understand that. I mean, at the same time, though, it's not a massive loss. Again, I say that for a few people. WWE has let go of a lot of people in the last year. And I don't sit here and say, man, they really dropped the ball on Von Wagner. Or, man, they really dropped the ball on Zion Quinn. Von Wagner I never thought was good to begin with. Zion Quinn I thought had potential. But when he got released, I didn't give a fuck. Because I'm like, you know what? He's been there long enough. Did they give him an opportunity? I mean, kind of. I mean, he worked a lot of singles matches, and he worked with Santos early on in his NXT run. People didn't really give a fuck, and he didn't really get over. He's a guy that I would say was like mid. Damon Kemp, I saw more in him than I did Zion Quinn or Von Wagner or all these other people they let go. Even most of the people they let go late last year from the main roster. Like Riddick Moss, I'm not going to say, man, they really dropped the ball on him. Like, no, he was there for a fucking decade, and he was just ever going to go so far. Damon Kemp, he wasn't there for that long, so I didn't really feel like he got a fair shot, but that's not to say that he was going to be a world champion. I mean, people get these things twisted. Like, they think it's like all or nothing. Like, man, why did you think they dropped the ball on him? Because they didn't give him a fair shot. It's hard to say if he would have been a world champion or not because he wasn't there for long enough, but I don't think he would have been. From what I saw, he was not going to be a world champion. But that's not to say I just didn't think he was worth letting go of. There's a lot of people in that NXT roster, I think, why is that person still there? They're just not that good. He was actually good, I thought, and they let him go, so whatever. As far as what he does now, I don't know. I mean, his brother joined the fucking NFL, so maybe he'll try it in another sport too, but I think he has enough talent to make it work. It would be pretty fucking funny if he went to TNA, considering now they're working with NXT. So maybe not TNA. I mean, I don't know. I don't see AEW picking him up. He would just fucking flop like a fish over there, I would think. They've signed a lot of people like him already. Like, whatever happened to Parker Bordeaux, or whatever his name was. He was awful. I think they let go of him eventually, but he ended up being pretty bad. I thought they never really tried with him in NXT, but then we found out he was exposed for being pretty fucking mid in AEW, so maybe AEW tries him out, but I just don't see him getting on TV. So I don't really know what he does now. MLW, actually, I feel like would be a great fit, given the style they have with their wrestlers. I feel like he might be a pretty good fit over there. His last question, Zoe Stark, Sonya Deville, and SheenaBasler formed a new stable Monday, and to no one's surprise, it went over like a fart in church. What stable name would you give them? Mine is the Three Bland Mice. What about you? I wouldn't say went over like a fart in church. I mean, they got cheers, but here's the problem with it. I like the idea of a trio, but they're all heels. Aren't Damage Control heels? I mean, they never really had a turn. We see a lot of heel versus heel shit in WWE these days, and some of it's fine. Some of it I don't get because I don't really... Some of these people aren't over, so it's like when you do heel versus heel, who's the crowd supposed to cheer for? In an instance where they're just not over, so that's like the tough thing. Zoe Stark, Sonya, and Shayna as a trio are currently not over. They just arrived, but they weren't over. Sonya or Zoe and Sheena were not over before, and they're working with Damage Control, who's also not currently all that over. So I don't really know who that benefits, but what name would I give? I don't know. I don't really care. The trio, it's like, what is it supposed to accomplish? Like, they don't have trios titles. They shouldn't. They have women's tag titles. I don't give a fuck about personally. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad to see Sonya back on the show, and hopefully she can make them more interesting. I just don't really see that happening. Brandon A. from YouTube. He says, what's up, GSM? Hope all is well as usual. Back to AEW versus WWE Forbidden Door. Few things to note. 1. Most matches I want to present are fresh matchups. However, I will break that rule a few times, including this card's lineup. 2. I try to keep the characters as they are currently and factor into that booking, into the booking rather. But there will be some exceptions to this because sometimes you just got to make that dream match because it needs to happen, damn it. And 3, one of the 4 pillars will open each show. Last week was Sammy Guevara. This week it's, and here's his show. He says, Night 2, live from Toronto. Number 1, Jack Perry versus John Cena. You honestly almost lost me with that one. I have almost no interest in seeing that at all. I don't. I just don't. I like Jack Perry. I think John Cena is obviously great. John Cena, as he currently is not the greatest in the ring anymore, but that's still not a match that... I mean, if you thought Cena in theory was mid, I don't think Perry and Cena is going to be much better. But anyway. Number 2, New Day versus Private Party. Okay, number 3, Mariah May versus Tiffany Stratton. Number 4, Sheamus versus Konosuke Takeshita. Number 5, oh yes, we're running it back, DIY versus FTR, baby. 6, Bianca Belair versus Chris Statlander. 3, Bloodline Rules match, Solo, Gorillas of Destiny, and Jacob Fatu versus the BCC, Moxley, Claudio, Yuta. I assume you mean Danielson, because that's 4-on-3, unless... Oh, and Eddie Kingston. I'm sorry, you said Eddie Kingston. Okay. 8, Cody Rhodes versus Swerve Strickland. 9, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. What are your thoughts and any more updates on you and SummerSlam plans? Take care. That is a drastic drop-off from last week. I thought last week's show that you gave me was great overall. This one sounds good, but overall this card does not sound great at all. Perry and Cena, like I said, I don't give a fuck. New Day and Private Party sounds like it would happen on main event because Private Party... You're talking current characters. The match would be good, but Private Party as they currently are, mean absolutely nothing. New Day is more over, but I just don't really care about New Day currently. Mariah and Tiffany I like. Sheamus and Konosuke Takeshita would beat the fuck out of each other, so I like it. DIY and FTR sounds great, obviously. We know how well they work together. Bianca and Chris Statlander would be a really good match. It doesn't scream dream match at all, but it sounds like a good match. It obviously would have been Bianca and Jade had Jade not jumped ship to WWE. Bloodline versus BCC, yeah, that'll be good. I don't know how great, but it would be good. In Kingston. Cody and Swerve sounds fun. Sure. Kevin Owens and Sammy versus Copeland and Christian would be, the Battle of the Canadians would be a great match. There are some great gems in there, but I think overall it's just not as good of a card as last week. I applaud the effort, though. As far as SummerSlam plans, I will indeed be there. I have not booked it yet. It has not been booked yet, but I will indeed be there. I am credentialed. I'm good to go. Alexis and I both will be there, so keep an eye out for that. I'm not going to tell you where I'm staying, obviously, because I don't know yet, and I wouldn't tell you anyway. Sorry, Brandon. But I will tell you this. I will almost positively be there from Thursday through Sunday. I would fly in Thursday. What time? I don't know. On Sunday, what time I would leave? I don't know. But I would be in the city. I almost said Toronto. I would be in Cleveland on Friday and Saturday all day. So I think they're doing SmackDown in Cleveland itself. Typically, they don't do it in the same city. I think they are now, which is nice. So I would probably be at SmackDown. I would be busy Friday, but I'll be around on Friday at some point. Saturday, I'll be at the show itself, and I don't know what else the weekend has in store, but that's what it's looking like. So, let me know what your plans are. And, including with Chris from, Chris W. and whatnot. We tried to meet up in Mania. Mania is the busiest weekend of the year, so I just couldn't make that happen. But I'd like to meet up with anyone that's there that would like to meet up. So let me know. If you're going to SummerSlam, let me know. Sometimes it is tight. Like sometimes I got to go from one place to the next and don't really have a chance to stop outside of the arena or spend a lot of time in one place. Typically it's like work-related stuff, but I'm hoping to make it work. So again, like I said, if you're going, Brandon, I know you said you are, let me know. Hit me up. And especially the week of, we can definitely try to coordinate something and we'll make it happen. Maybe even if it's outside of SummerSlam, real quickly. Like after the show, probably not, because I'll be in the press conference most likely. So that's the thing. Like it's hard to say, meet up after the show, and then I'm there until like fucking whatever time, whenever the press conference gets over. So unless you're willing to wait that long, I don't know. But either way, we'll figure it out, and I'm looking forward to seeing you and as many people as possible while I'm there, both new and familiar faces. Hand sanitizer 1963 from YouTube as well. This is what I'm talking about. A lot of YouTube questions this week. A lot of great YouTube questions, but a lot of YouTube questions nonetheless. They said, "Hi GSM, I've talked/asked you before about age and how WWE might be pushing guys too late. I saw a graph that showed the median age for wrestlers back in 2000 through 2010 was 30. It tended to be younger for Raw than SmackDown. For Raw and SmackDown, I assume you mean. It has creeped up to about 36 this past year. How much do you think this could be an issue for WWE in general, or do you see it not being an issue? Do you see them slowly going younger in the future, or is this how you see it from now on? I know WWE is rolling at the moment and is in a good state, but in my opinion, I think a younger median of wrestlers could help out WWE in appeal, and also maybe in wrestlers' appeal for the company, knowing they can be great at a young age and pushed up to the main roster if they put in the effort and time. No, I don't think it's a problem, and here's why. Yes, they are pushing people later now, but that's a good thing. Because in years past, in those years that you're talking about, 09, maybe not in the 2000s specifically, in the early 2000s, like Batista was pushed later. But like later on, especially 07, 08, 09, 2010, like 06, 07, they were still pushing the Takers and the Cenas, and Cena was still fresh at that point, but like the Batistas and Edges, and they weren't exactly like spring chickens at that point. But they were pushing a lot of Jack Swaggers, and Del Rio, I think, was already 30-something when they started pushing him. Maybe he was late 20s, I don't remember. I think he was already on the older side. But they pushed a lot of people that were younger, but they weren't ready, though. So a lot of those people, and they also botched their pushes, but like Sheamus, Barrett, Miz, a lot of those guys were very good, but they pushed them way too fucking quickly. So that's why the product wasn't great, because they were pushing all these same types of people around that point, and none of them were ready for that sort of spotlight. At least in the late 09, or the late 2000s, early 2010s is when they were really having that issue. When you would see a lot of new faces, which was great, but a lot of these guys they were pushing too aggressively or were just not ready for the main event spot at all. That was the problem they were dealing with back then. Now they're more willing to give older people a shot. If this was 09, LA Knight would not be in the spot that he's in. He just would not be. Damian Priest would not be the world champion. Because they would want to push younger wrestlers, guy, or younger wrestlers, pal, like younger wrestlers all the time, blah, blah, blah. And that's great, but they got to be ready. They pushed and over-pushed a lot of, like Drew McIntyre, he was really, really young back then. He got released. He wasn't ready. They could have done more with him, but he wasn't ready when they used him in the early 2010s. And they pushed him way too quickly, way too fast before he could really find his footing. And obviously he had his own issues. He's talked about that, but by and large, they were having an issue with that sort of stuff back then. Nowadays, it would be one thing if they were only pushing older people. Because you're right, who are you going to build around for the future? But they're not, though. You mentioned people, or you didn't mention these people, but like Knight, Priest, Lashley, like they're all late 30s, early 40s. AJ Styles, mid-40s. But then you also have Rhea Ripley, who's like 25, 26, 27, whatever. You have Tiffany Stratton, who's like 24, 25. You have Roxanne Perez, who's 22. Dominic Mysterio, who's in his mid-20s. Austin Theory, who's still in his mid-20s. He's not exactly the future anymore, I don't think, but he's a guy that's still on the younger side. Grayson Waller is actually a lot older than Theory, surprisingly. But my point is that they've pushed a lot of younger people from NXT who are ready. And NXT has a lot of youth in it. Like you mentioned the median age on the main roster, but that's not including a lot of the people in NXT. Like a lot of the people they use in NXT now are on the younger side and do have a very bright future ahead of them and can be big stars in the future. So I don't really have an issue with it because they're like bringing in these collegiate athletes. If they're bringing in these collegiate athletes who are from college, obviously, they're no more in their late teens or early 20s. Javon Evans, I don't know if he's a future world champion. He's fucking 20. He just main evented a PLE on Sunday for NXT. He's great. So I don't really worry about that. They have a lot of youth on the main roster. They have a lot of youth in NXT specifically. And a lot of those people they pan out should be on the main roster at some point. I'm glad they're also utilizing the older people because those people still have a shot and were not given a fair shot during the Triple H or during the Vince regime, rather. If this was the Triple H regime 5 years ago, then LA Knight wouldn't be 41. He would have been 36. He would have been back in WWE years earlier. You know, he probably made the right decision by waiting to come back when he did, because if he was here 5 years ago, they probably would have fucking buried the guy. Like, who knows? If Vince was still in charge, he probably still would have been Max Dupree and whatnot, you know? And they would have been released. You know, I don't know. I don't really think the age thing is an issue. I think they have a lot of great talent on the main roster, a lot of great talent in NXT, and it's a nice balance. I mean, even when Hulk Hogan was on top, a lot of those guys were already in their fucking mid to late 30s, early 40s that they were using in the 80s and 90s. Steve Austin wasn't exactly young when they were using him, but it wasn't a problem because he was one of the greatest of all time. So they need a nice balance, and I think they have that across all their brands right now, so I don't really see it being a problem. No L from Facebook. Now that Rhea Ripley is back, do you see Dominic Mysterio costing her the women's title at SummerSlam against Liv Morgan? I do. I don't think you're going to have a scenario where Rhea gets the belt back as soon as SummerSlam. I think they hold off on that until the next pay-per-view or later down the road. I mean, Rhea could get the belt back, and that's fine. I think you stretch it out a little bit. Dom costs Rhea the belt either intentionally or unintentionally, and that keeps the feud alive. So, yes, I do see that happening. Next question of theirs. Since next year will be John Cena's last run with WWE, what would be your top 5 Cena burns on the mic / top 5 rivals of all time? I think I've answered the Cena's rivals question before, but I'll answer it again in a second. The top 5 Cena burns, I mean, it would not be JBL as poopy. I'll tell you that much. When that was when he was feuding with JBL again back in 2008, yeah, that was awful. That was when I started watching, too. It wasn't funny then. It's not funny now. But he's cooked a lot of people, including, like, I don't know about burns. Like, he fucking buried Theory last year in the mic. I don't know if that would be up there, but that was a verbal just destruction of Theory by Cena. His promos with Punk were always amazing. His promos with Owens were always really good. He had some great promos with AJ Styles. I mean, that kind of goes along with my answer for top 5 rivals. Punk, Edge, and Orton, I think, are the top 3. I would put AJ Styles in there as well. For number 5, Shawn Michaels is a good one because they had great chemistry. JBL, I know people might be tempted to say. I'm willing to put Owens in there. I feel like him and Owens had a great feud in 2015, and it really helped put Owens on the map. They had great matches, great promos. I feel like Owens really brought the best out of Cena during that U.S. Open phase. Him and Rollins have always had good chemistry. I wouldn't put Roman on there. They haven't feuded enough for him to be the answer. I don't know. Taker, no, obviously. Triple H, you could say. I wasn't always really fond of the Cena Triple H matches. They had some really good matches, but I wouldn't say Triple H myself. I'm trying to think of who else he feuded with. Jericho, no. Him and Jericho had a lot of matches, but I would not say Jericho. 09 Nexus, God, no. Batista, maybe. Probably not, but maybe Batista. I always love their chemistry. Big Show, no. You could put Brock. I know people might say Brock. I wouldn't. Only a couple of their matches I really liked. So I would not say Brock. Let me think. 2011 was really Punk. I mean, maybe Rock. Actually, probably Rock. I would take Owens out of there and say Rock. I think Rock and him didn't have the best matches, but their feud was pretty memorable. So I would take Owens off. So I would say Rock, Styles, Orton, Edge, and Punk are seen as top 5 rivals of all time, at least in my opinion. Christopher L. from Facebook, their first question was, he says, last week ESPN posted their picks for the 10 best women's wrestlers of 2024. And to the shock of many, I'm sure Bayley was to the shock of many, I'm sure he says, Bayley was the number one pick. I know she has a huge fan base that I myself am a part of, but with all that being said, I find it ridiculous that she gets the top spot for winning the Royal Rumble and winning at WrestleMania. With those accomplishments, well, those are accomplishments, he says, she was in a basic formulaic storyline with Io going into Mania, and even though the match was great, the fans live were very subdued for the most part of it. On top of that, she's been cold since Mania, being put in feuds where she's not really the most important part of the feud, or the match itself. Even though I love Bayley, her title run since Mania has not warranted the number one pick the way that timeless Toni Storm has. As she is put on bangers and is currently involved in one of the best storylines in wrestling at the current moment. Do you agree with her being the number one pick over Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley? So what's, not the criteria, but like, what year are we talking here? Like, are we talking like, but even if it was like April to April, so to speak, I would still not say Bayley. Bayley's great. Bayley's my favorite, probably women's wrestler of all time. But even then, like, she lost a lot. And she had a lot of good matches, but she lost a lot. So, like, it's not clearly a 2024 because we're only 7 months into the year. So I would assume maybe it's June to June for ESPN. Like, from even then, I would not say Bayley. I love Bayley, but you're right, though. She's not my number one for, like, best women's wrestler of the past year. I wouldn't even say Rhea, because Rhea was champion for a good part of that. But people criticized her run for not having a lot of great matches, which is true. I liked Rhea's run. I thought it was good. I didn't know if it was great. I thought it was pretty good. She was also always involved in Judgment Day stuff. She was all over the show. So I could understand the argument for Rhea even over Bayley. I would say timeless Toni Storm, though, because if we're talking like June to June, which I don't know if we are, but if we are, Toni was the women's champion last June. She was women's champion last summer until she lost it in early August to Shida. And then Saraya won it. And then Storm was already doing the timeless Toni Storm thing by August. Then she got the belt in, November? Because Shida beat Saraya for it. It just went back and forth for a while. And then Toni won it at Full Gear. And then she's been champion ever since. And she's also had great matches. Like, some of the matches early on were not great as part of the timeless character, but she's really found a rhythm that works in the matches that work. And she's had some really great matches. So yeah, the answer, if we're including, if it's WWE, then maybe. But if it's all of wrestling, it said women's wrestlers of 2024, which again, we're only 6-7 months in. But even if we're including 2024, I would definitely say timeless Toni Storm over Bayley. Your second question, I was unbelievably angry watching the world title match on Saturday. I thought the match was just fine, but slightly disappointing as I felt both men were not always on the same page. And of course, that botch with Damian Priest. It was the cash-in where things really got ugly. For starters, the constant interference by Punk on Drew, while part of the story, is starting to wear thin. Having Drew cash in and is making Punk look like the heel, regardless of what Drew has said or done. On top of that, by having Drew cash in the briefcase, the exact night he won it, you ruin the chance of him cashing in at maybe Mania next year. That was never going to happen. And lastly, you made him and Seth Rollins look like goobers who couldn't get the job done. Like I said, I know it's all part of the storyline between the three, but I felt the execution of it was very poorly done. Do you think the constant interferences are starting to wear thin and come up uninspired? What is the point of suspending or quitting the talent if they're just going to give up a week later? I don't know what you mean by that. And then you also said, and do you think the execution on Saturday was as terrible as they said? It wasn't terrible. It was fine, but here's the problem. You're more in line with what I'm thinking. And someone else asked about this. I do think it was a waste of the briefcase. I won't go on for too long about it. I'm sure we'll talk about it more tomorrow on WrestleRant Radio with RJ. And I already went on not a rant about it, but I already discussed my thoughts on it on Twitter the other day. Here's my rationale. People did not mind it, and people were like, oh, people are complaining it was wasted. Because it was fucking wasted. And if you're saying it wasn't wasted because it furthered the story, correct, it did further the story. The problem is, we already saw the story furthered in the exact same fashion at Mania and a Clash a month ago. Almost the exact same fucking way we saw Punk screw over McIntyre. Yes, Punk has since attacked, or Monk, great show by the way, favorite show of all time. McIntyre had since attacked Punk in Chicago on SmackDown, and that was Punk's revenge. I just don't even think McIntyre needed to be in the match. I don't. Or you have Punk cost McIntyre the briefcase. It makes Punk look like an asshole. Because he said, oh, you'll never be world champion for as long as I live. Okay, then make sure he doesn't win the briefcase. And then give the opportunity to, like, your best friend, Jey Uso. It makes him look like an asshole if you knew McIntyre was going to win or let him win, and then let him get close to winning the belt only to fuck him over. It fucks over everyone else in Money in the Bank that he didn't fuck over Drew then. You know what I mean? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. The other thing is, like I said, they already did a similar angle at Clash. If they didn't do what they did at Clash, I would probably have been okay with it. If we had not seen Punk for a while or whatever, it just makes Drew look dumb. I mean, he did attack Punk in Chicago, so he probably thought he was out of commission for a while. That I understand. But he was made to look like a fucking idiot at Clash of the Castle by not thinking Punk would be there. Punk even said on Raw a month earlier, oh, I'll see you in Scotland. He kind of like teased it on Raw when I went in May. And then McIntyre still didn't see Punk coming. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. The Punk-McIntyre feud's been amazing. I just think what they did on Saturday was pointless. It furthered the feud, yes, but how did it really further it? We're in the same spot that we were in a month ago. He did the same angle twice, basically. And it came at the expense of the briefcase. So it was a fine angle. It didn't, like, upset me or make me unbelievably angry like you said it did for you. I just thought it was like, it made me shake my head. I'm like, what was the point? The point was furthering the feud. Are you any more excited for that match at SummerSlam than you were a month ago? The answer is probably no. For those that are defending it, which is fine. I mean, if you liked it, I don't give a fuck, but people were taking exception with the fact that people were upset with how it happened, and I get it. I get it. So don't say, oh, people are complaining. No, they're complaining for a right reason. If you don't want to see someone with the briefcase for the next 9 months, that makes more sense. But you could have had him cash in closer to when the cash-in is. Does it bother you that much that someone would be holding a briefcase for 9 months again? I'd rather have someone hold the briefcase for a long time as opposed to cashing in a month or in 6 months. I don't know. I didn't like that at all. I just thought it was a complete fucking waste. If you have such a problem with two people carrying around briefcases simultaneously, again, I'm not really sure why that would be such an issue, especially if they're on separate shows. Why that would bother you, I don't know, but people have an issue with it. I think that's a little weird, but okay. Then they shouldn't do men's and women's Money in the Bank ladder matches, or just don't do the show at all, which people would be okay with, but they're never going to do that. They're not going to get rid of the show. So, who cares? I don't know. It doesn't bother me. And the idea that, oh, we already had someone hold it for 9 months, so we don't want to have someone hold it for 9 months again. Dude, they've had repeated failed cash-ins for years now. And that was another thing. If we didn't have multiple failed cash-ins in the last 7 years that were terrible, then maybe I probably would have been okay with it. But we've seen enough failed cash-ins to where it's like, it was a fucking waste. It was just stupid. I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of it. It doesn't bother me that. I mean, it sounds like it bothered me. It doesn't bother me to a great deal, but I just thought it was stupid. You said, who should take the belts off of all the champions in AEW? I don't know. I mean, the AEW has so many champions. I don't even know who all the current champions are off the top of my head. But like the Bucks are the current tag team champions. If the Motor City Machine Guns go there, which I still think they are, I don't think they're going to WWE, which would be cool, but I don't think it's happening. It probably should be them because I'm not really sure who else it would be. For Swerve, I would have said Ospreay. At this point, honestly, Paige wouldn't be a bad idea. Swerve can be champion for the rest of the year and I wouldn't be upset. I would say Ospreay, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Timeless Tony Storm should lose to Mariah May. Mercedes, I don't know. I mean, they have so many women. I don't think she loses to Britt. Although if Britt won it, I would be fine with that. So maybe Britt. The TNT title, Jack Perry. It really should be Takeshita, but he's a heel, and they're both heel, so probably not. Takeshita should beat Ospreay, but again, I don't know if that's going to happen. Probably not. It's really tough to say right now. And then, what's the other title? The TNT title, the international title, and the Okada's title. I give so little of a shit about that belt, I couldn't even tell you. Their next question. Ethan Page won the title on Sunday after a strong fatal 4-way. And I'm torn between it. On one hand, it's cool to see the man get a chance to be a big star somewhere else, as I do like the guy. But on the other hand, I feel like he got the rocket to his back too fast, too soon, without giving any real reason for anybody to believe that he's worthy of being at the level of world champion. He's good in the ring and on the mic, but there's guys who are probably more deserving than him. And on top of that, I wasn't too enthralled with his recent interview. calling AEW chaotic and unorganized and somewhat burying the company while also bootlicking WWE and Shawn Michaels. Just something about the way he talked about AEW rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't in his position, so I wouldn't know, but I wish he could have given a little bit more, shown a more appreciation, he's saying, for Tony Khan, for giving him a platform instead of just shooting him down on it. Do you think I make fair points in basically calling him a sellout? Do you think they rushed this progression to strap the rocket on him too fast, so quickly in his run? And where do you see his run going from here? Loaded question. Do you make fair points? Yeah. Did they push him too quickly? Sure, but it's not like Ethan Page is this fucking NIL athlete. Like, the guy's ready. Like, he can be champion and he's fine because I think Ethan Page is good. Will he have a good run? I don't know. He could be champion for a couple of months and lose it right back to Trick. I honestly like the outcome because I like Ethan Page, but more so than that, it gets Trick back in chase mode. Did he need to have a 6-month run? No, not everyone does. Just because Carmelo and Ilya did doesn't mean that Trick does. Trick might be better in chase mode anyway. I think he is. So Ethan Page becoming champion, it's better than Shawn Spears. I like Shawn Spears, but Ethan Page is a much better fit for that spot. It gives Ethan Page a chance to see what he can do. I had no issue with the outcome at all. It doesn't matter if he was in there for 5 weeks. Again, it's not like he just debuted in his fucking Obafemi. Like, Obafemi needs more time to really get seasoned. Ethan Page doesn't. The guy's ready. Maybe not for the main roster if they don't have anything for him to do. As far as the AEW stuff goes, who gives a shit? I mean, people talk shit about WWE all the time. They don't really say, I mean, I didn't listen to the interview, so it's hard for me to say. But, like, appreciative of what? I mean, that he gave him a job? I mean, I would hope he would. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. He can be appreciative. He could say thanks, Tony Khan, for the opportunity. Maybe it's implied. I don't know. But here's the thing, though. When he left TNA, from what I understand, Ethan Page had an offer to go to WWE in early 2021. He just chose not to, and then he went to AEW instead, which I think was the better landing spot for him at that point. But what did they even really do with him, though? Like, it's not like he had all this success and he should have praised the fact he had a great run there. He really didn't, though. I mean, he was in a million fucking groups. The Firm, he was with Dan Lambert, he was with Scorpio Sky, and he didn't do anything. He was with Matt Hardy. Was he even really given a chance to show what he could do on his own? Like, he was always with a partner or a manager or a group. It's what I was saying about Damon Kemp, and I think Ethan Page is much better than him. You can't really see what he could do on his own. I mean, he did in Ring of Honor, but he wasn't there for all that long, and Ring of Honor is a dead brand anyway. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Tony Khan didn't really do anything with him. He was a regular on the show, I guess. I never really gave a fuck about Ethan Page because he was constantly doing shit with other people, and he didn't need those other people. So, I don't know. I mean, did he need to say it was chaotic and unorganized? Because it probably is. I mean, Dijak said a lot of unflattering things about WWE that I'm sure aren't inaccurate. So, I mean, you could say the same thing about him. I mean, who gives a shit? I don't know. I don't really think that's that big of a deal. He's certainly not a sellout, I'll tell you that much. Like, what does that even mean? At noob_n_co TV, their question was, your thoughts on the men's Money in the Bank briefcase being wasted just for the sake of a storyline. I talked about that before. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the YouTube machine and on Twitter and YouTube rather. Real honesty with John Ritland, does great content. Check out his work. He says, so was it just me or did the Money in the Bank show seem like a snake bit show? Each match seemed to have issues, especially the women's match, which consisted of each woman trying to seemingly paralyze themselves. Yeah, that women's match started out pretty rough. It ended up being a pretty fun match, though, with some of the shit they were doing. Like I said earlier, I already talked about it. The shit they were doing was so fucking reckless. I mean, all these companies do it. It was a fun match, but it's certainly a problem, and they need to tone it down so they don't get hurt. They were lucky no one got seriously hurt in that match. I could say the same thing for any AEW match as well. No, I thought it was a great show. I don't know if it was just you, but I thought it was a great show. I enjoyed the show overall. I don't know about every match having issues. The Money in the Bank match for the men seemed fine. The world title match did have issues. The 6-man didn't have issues. It was just a solid match. I don't know if it wasn't exciting, but it wasn't an issue. And then Zayn and Breaker, I don't know if they were exactly having a bad match either. So I disagree on that. I enjoyed the show, but if you thought it was a snake pit show, I don't know if you were the only one is my point. There might have been other people who thought the same thing. Your second question, when do you think Roxanne, I saw the RO and I thought Roxanne Perez, I filled in the blank myself. But when do you think Roman Reigns will return to kick off his feud with Solo Sikoa? Obviously, his dad's passing takes priority, but still. I still say it's going to be the night of SummerSlam after Cody and Solo. I think that headlines the show, and I think Roman Reigns returns afterward. They could hold off, and I would be okay with it, but I think people would be pretty pissed if Cody beat Solo and that was it, or Solo won the belt, God forbid. But I think Roman Reigns returns that night. How often we see him after that, leading into the fall, I don't know if he'll be a regular or just popping up once in a while. I think it's like the Brock thing, though. When Brock came back at SummerSlam back in 2021 to kick off his storyline heading into Mania, I think they did the same thing with Roman Reigns here. I don't think we can see Roman and Solo at the September pay-per-view or Bad Blood or whatever, or Bash in Berlin. But I think we see him pop up occasionally and they kick off the next chapter of this Bloodline storyline. If they don't, that's fine. I think they could hold off, but if they do, I think that's probably where it would happen. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, their first question was, your thoughts on Raw and SmackDown being planned to have their women's mid-card titles? We've talked about this before. I like the idea of women's mid-card belts. I would get rid of the tag titles. They're pointless. There's no division. No one cares about it. Get rid of that shit. The women's mid-card belts I like more. I don't know if you need two, like one for each brand. I would just have one that floats. If you're going to have the tag titles float, have the fucking women's mid-card belt float, in my opinion. Just create more stories for the women that aren't about championships. That's another thing, too. WWE could do a better job of that. We're seeing that now in AEW, which is nice. WWE could do that, too. I don't even know if it's really confirmed. I know Meltzer had kind of backed it up, but what does that even really mean? If it happens, I don't think it's imminent. Let's put it that way. I could see it totally happening at some point. I don't know if we need two. And if they have two, get rid of the fucking tag titles. The tag titles are... get rid of the tag titles anyway, but women's mid-card belts to me make more sense. Second question. Your thoughts on the double turn between Hangman Adam Page, face now heel, and Swerve Strickland, vice versa. They went with Swerve, the hot hand. People were already cheering him, so they turned him babyface. And Adam Page, we haven't really seen as a heel in AEW at all. So I like the turn. It feels organic. Their third question, do you see Gunther winning the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam? I do. I would be shocked if he did not walk out of that show as champion. At Seth Gutt from Twitter, his question was, would you consider NXT to be any more kid-friendly than Raw and SmackDown? Not really. NXT 2.0, when it started, they were just doing the raunchiest shit, which made for terrible television. Like, it's not like, oh, it's, about tits and ass, like it's a great show. Like, no, especially nowadays, that's not what makes a great show. Like, the stuff with Liv and Dom is not exactly kid-friendly, but it's not like they're being overt with it. It's not like they're in there having sex or something. You know what I mean? Like, they're implying stuff, but, like, I have an 11-year-old sister, and I wouldn't show her that stuff, but if she came across watching it, I don't think it would be that big of a deal. I think there's more stuff in AEW that's probably more inappropriate than what WWE is doing. That's not pitting the two companies against each other, but that's also a PG TV-14 show, so that's why. WWE's not, but they still get away with a lot of shit. They also swear a lot, so I don't know. As far as NXT, though, I know you're a father, Seth. I don't know if it's any more fan-friendly or kid-friendly than Raw and SmackDown. Maybe a little bit. They're not doing the raunch shit as much. They still do some of it. So, maybe a little bit, but it's not like it's a G show compared to Raw and SmackDown. It's pretty much all the same stuff. At E13A, what do you predict will happen in Shrek 5? I have honestly no idea. Shrek 4, I couldn't even really tell you. I remember what it was about with Shrek, it was like It's a Wonderful Life, but Shrek version. I didn't even really think that was that great of a movie. That was pretty forgettable. 3 was good. 1 and 2 were goated. 3 was good. 4 was pretty mediocre. They're making a 5th one so fucking late that I just feel like in today's world that I just don't think it's going to be funny at all. Even with the original cast, I don't know if it's going to be all that funny whatsoever. I am very skeptical. It's coming out in 2 years. That's such a long time. So I honestly have no idea what it's going to be about. I don't know when it takes place. I don't think they bring back characters. I think it's just an all-new story. I don't know. I don't care what it's about. I just hope it's good. And I'm very skeptical that it will be. Your second question, do you think John Cena should have his final match / feud with an old rival, example Randy Orton, CM Punk, or a new person, example Gunther or Braun Breaker? I don't really care, honestly. If they wanted to have his last match with Orton, I'd be fine with it, or Punk. If they wanted to have Gunther beat him in his last match, or Breaker, that's fine too. I don't really have a preference. I would say he could do whatever he wants, but he said he's not handpicking any opponents. So, It's obviously not really up to him. It's whatever WWE wants to do because he's the ultimate company guy. It could be any one of them, honestly, and I wouldn't really mind. As long as it's something special and it's not like a mediocre person or a mediocre feud, any of those four, honestly, would work for me. Orton, Punk, Gunther, or Breakker, I'm totally fine with any one of them. Their third question, how long should Ethan Page stay NXT champion and who should beat him? It's tough to say. I mean, I hate this idea that, champions have to hold their belts for 6 months or whatever. Yeah, but, not every title run has to be long. Williams was 2.5 months. Was it this most amazing run? No, but not any 2.5 title run has to be, Ethan Page might be just champion for a month and then drop the belt right back to Trick. I think he might be champion for a month. If it's anything longer than that, a month or two, then I'd be pleasantly surprised. I don't think he has to be champion for that long. I think it's just to get Trick back in chase mode and get the belt back. NXT doing the back and forth thing for now is totally fine by me. And who should beat him? Probably Trick. If it's not Trick, I don't really know what other baby faces they have. I mean, Javon Evans is not ready. I love Javon. I think he's great from what I've seen so far. I don't think it should be Javon. It probably would and should be Trick. And last question of the episode, of this lengthy, extended, supersized episode. At OAJMatt16, OAJMatt16. Do you think we will get a long MSK/Rascals run in NXT, like possible championships and whatnot? First of all, I fucking popped hard for Rascals being back in NXT last night, or even just for the first time. It's actually only ever really been MSK. That was the first time we've ever seen Trey Miguel in NXT, so I thought that was fucking awesome. And they called them the Rascals. They had the TNA nameplate. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I thought that was really, really cool. As far as how long it's going to last, it's probably not going to last long. I feel like it's just like a little thing they're going to be doing with Wes until he goes up to the main roster probably shortly. But I would drag it out, honestly. They're having a match with Gallus next week. I think they're going to have a 6-man at Slammiversary. I know Trey Miguel is facing Charlie Dempsey on Thursday's Impact. I think one of the other guys, maybe Miles Bourne, is getting involved. I don't remember. Spoiler alert, I guess, but who watches TNA beside me? Someone's going to get involved, and I think they're going to set up for a 6-man at Slammiversary. So we get Rascals in NXT, and we get the Rascals in TNA. Sign me the fuck up. That's awesome. As far as championships, probably not. What titles? They don't have 6-man titles. Would the Rascals win the tag titles in NXT? Hey, fuck yeah, sign me up on that. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be pretty fucking cool, though. Anyway, appreciate you guys sending in the questions. As always, this was a lot of questions and a long episode. Just about an hour and a half in here. That's crazy. A lot of new names as well, so I appreciate you guys. All the returning names, I appreciate you guys too. But the new names, thanks for sending along your questions. If you're listening but not sending in a question, send in a question. Even if it's something I've already answered before or something someone else has asked, that's totally fine too. I love seeing new faces in the comments on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So keep sending on in your questions to me on Twitter at WrestleRant, #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Find me in the comment section on Tuesday nights over there and drop a comment on the post, if not on the wall itself. And in the comment section on this very video, I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.